How did the Red Sox do and what went wrong? We're going to find out today. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbett. Thank you very much for clicking on this video, the first video officially of the Red Sox offseason. And the first thing we got to do is figure out how the Red Sox did in 2025 before we start talking about what they need to do in 2026, which is exactly why today we are going to be grading every single player and the coaching staff, as well as the front office and the owners of this Red Sox team. As you can see, I wasn't kidding. We are quite literally going to be grading every single person that touched a Red Sox uniform, starting with Jorge Alcala, who just simply was not very good, right? I don't need to go into the stats for that. Then we've got Brayan Bello. Bello's an interesting one because of the fact that he was really good for most of the year and then really left a sour taste in our mouth to end the season, which means I don't really think I could give him an A. So I'm going to stick him in the B category. Brennan Bernardino, I'm going to put right in there in the B category as well. I think for the most part this season, he was a very solid pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. Alex Bregman, again, another guy, right? Started off incredibly well in the first half. I believe we put him in S tier. I don't think we could put him in S tier because of what he did in the second half of this season. But if we're just doing the season as a whole, right, he's probably an A tier player, both what he did off the field and what he did on the field. Walker Buehler, this one could be pretty, you know what, I'm going to put him in the worst category. Red Sox signed this guy to be essentially a number 3 pitcher, and he was by far and away the worst pitcher on your staff. The fact that he got to, 22, 23 games with the Red Sox feels kind of unbelievable, doesn't it? Nick Burdi. I actually thought Nick Burdi was solid. He didn't really get a ton of time on the big league club, so I can't give him like an A or an S, but he was a pretty solid pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. Christian Campbell. It's either a D or an F, right? I mean, if we're just basing it on what they did at the major league level this season, it's hard for me to give him anything else. I'll put him in the D category because he had that really good first month. Tristan Casas had absolutely no impact on this season, right? If we're talking about the grand scheme of things, he essentially did absolutely nothing for this Red Sox team. Aroldis Chapman, pretty easy S tier, yeah? I mean, I was absolutely blown away by Aroldis Chapman this year. I think he outplayed every single one of my expectations. Even the biggest Chapman fan coming into the season had to have been blown away by what he did this year. Criswell was a solid pitcher for the Red Sox. I mean, the only reason I'm putting him in C tier is because he didn't really get a ton of time at the big league level. Garrett Crochet, another one of those S tier players, right? It's so simple. He's probably going to come in second or third for AL Cy Young voting, right? He's probably going to get a couple of MVP votes. He was one of the top 2, 3, 4 pitchers in the entire sport this year. Just unbelievable. Rafael Devers. Some people are going to want me to put him in the worst. I mean, it wasn't his fault he got traded. Well, it was kind of his fault he got traded, right? He was a good player, but his performance off the field was a lot worse than his performance on the field. I'll stick him in the C category, I guess, right? Hunter Dobbins, I'm going to put Hunter Dobbins in the C category. I think if he had more time to really sort of settle into his role with the Boston Red Sox, he probably would have made his way up to A or B, but because he did get injured, he never really got to that A or B tier, at least in my opinion, right? Durant, I'm going to put in B. Right, he still was one of your, I think, the top player for just going on B-WAR on your roster, but incredibly inconsistent, had an absolutely miserable postseason. Defense took a step backwards, right? If we're talking last year being an S-tier season, this season was absolutely, and I think undeniably, a step down from what we saw last year, but still was a productive player for the Red Sox. Conley Early, probably B-tier, right? I think you put him in B-tier. I don't know if he had enough innings to get to A-tier here, but there is a ton of promise with Conley Early. I'm incredibly excited to see what he can do next year. Do I put Eaton in the B tier? The problem is a lot of these, you're going to sit there and you're going to say, well, Eaton didn't have as much impact as Jarren Duran. You're absolutely right, but you have to go by role that they were put in, right? Jarren Duran was expected to be one of your best players on your team. Eaton was just expected to be a role player, and he actually showed up and had some really big moments for the Red Sox, so I'm going to put him in that B tier category. Richard Fitz, I think, is a pretty easy C tier guy. Honestly, you could make the argument that he's D tier because he just simply wasn't incredibly effective, but I do think him getting tossed around a lot had a lot to do with that. I still think there's some potential here with Richard Fitz. Michael Fulmer, basically no impact, right? The dude had like 3 innings on the Boston Red Sox. I'm not going to go too deep into that guy. Justinson Garcia, again, I mean, you put him in D tier if you're just basing it off of, okay, how was he at the major league level, but I'm going to put him in no impact because he was only here for what, a week and a half, right? Basically, and then he ended up going back down to AAA. Giolito's another tough one, right? Because he was really good for the Red Sox. He was pretty much at Brayan Bello's level most of the year, and then he just faded away, but it was because an injury at the end of the season. So I'm going to put him in B tier for now. Romy's a really interesting one because you could make the argument that he's A tier, right? If we're just basing it off of role that he was expected to play coming into the season and how he ended the season. I mean, he was an over 300 hitter in over 100 games. He had one of the highest OPSs on the team. I think you put him in A tier. Didn't show up in the playoffs for sure, but definitely a part of this team. Before we continue though, we do need to take a quick break to thank today's sponsors. Because I have to tell you, if there's a surefire way to feel better the next morning after drinks with friends, it's pre-alcohol. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And the last time I talked to you guys about ZBiotics, I told you that I was pretty skeptical about it at first. I used it at Fenway Park back in September, and I absolutely loved the way I felt the next morning. And I've continued to use it into October, especially during Oktoberfest season. Here's how this thing works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough mornings after drinking. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Fall is here, and that means it's time to enjoy cooler weather and some drinks out with friends. Whether you're enjoying a pint at an Oktoberfest celebration like me or having a spooky cocktail at a Halloween party, don't forget to drink pre-alcohol before drinking. You'll be able to celebrate and still wake up feeling great the next day. To check out ZBiotics, go to zbiotics.com/RSR to learn more and get 15% off your order when you use RSR at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason at all, they will refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/RSR and use code RSR at checkout for 15% off. Luis Guerrero, he was all right this year, right? I think I'm gonna put him in the D tier. I don't know. That might be a little bit harsh, but he definitely had enough innings to make an impact. I don't know if it was an overwhelmingly positive one. David Hamilton was okay. Yeah, I'm gonna put him in D tier, right? He did get a pretty decent large sample size. He was fine defensively, obviously a pretty good base runner, but ultimately got caught the most times on the base pass. Never really hit above 200 this season. Kyle Harrison, like, he was all right? I think he was okay. Helped the Red Sox down the stretch here, but nothing really crazy. I think you put him in that C tier. Liam Hendricks. Do we put him in the worst or do we put him in no impact? I mean, you can put him in either. I'm going to put him in the worst just because it always is going to rub me the wrong way that he argued about his injury and then ended up with surgery. He argued about his playing time and then ended up being a terrible pitcher when he was out there. Jordan Hicks, yeah. I mean, what else are we going to say about this, right? That's a pretty obvious the worst. Tanner Houck, do we put no impact, right? I mean, he pitched for a decent amount of time here. Do we put him in the D category? We know it was over injury that he was pitching, but it really wasn't good when he was on the mounds. Yeah, Isaiah Campbell, F, right? I don't think he was the worst that the Red Sox have seen this year, but he certainly wasn't great. Zach Kelly, I'm going to give Zach Kelly a C, and I think that's controversial because of how his overall season went. But his last month, man, it was really, really good, and he did look pretty solid in the postseason, so I can't hate him too much. You guys know I have a little bit of bias towards Zach Kelly. Nathaniel Lowe, he was all right? I honestly might move him to a D. He had I'll keep him in a C. He had a couple of good stretches for the Sox, not a huge sample size. Marcelo Meyer, I'm going to put him in C too. I'm a huge Marcelo guy, so this one hurts me to my core, but you know, the offense was kind of coming around there, but it really wasn't fantastic overall. The defense was absolutely incredible. He was the best statistical defensive infielder you had. If he hadn't gotten injured, I do think he probably would have made his way up to a B or an A tier. Steven Matz. I actually thought Steven Matz was pretty solid. I know he had his moments, but if we're talking about like deadline acquisitions, this was definitely the top of the top. You got Dustin May in here. Dustin May was an absolute failure all the way around. I think you can make the case that he's in the worst category, right? The trade was terrible. His performance was terrible. His health was terrible. There really wasn't any positives from Dustin May. Giovanni Moran. I mean, he pitched enough, right? He wasn't very good. I'll put him in the D tier, I guess. There was some redeemable qualities there once in a while, but it wasn't exactly fantastic. Chris Murphy's a C-tier player for sure, right? He had some great moments with the Red Sox. He had some really bad moments with the Red Sox. Ended up in sort of a mop-up-ish role in the postseason, right? Carlos Narvaez, despite everything, I'm putting him in the A tier. One, because he's a rookie and because this was his rookie season, so there's a little bit of leeway there. Two, defensively, he was really great, right? There were some mistakes, especially towards the end here, but if we're looking at the season as a whole, I think it was a really great defensive season for him. And Sean Newcomb, he was fine, right? I don't think he was good or bad. He was just sort of a mop-up victory cigar type reliever for the Sox. I think Nick Sogard, again, we're talking about strictly what role did they hold. He held a really great sort of substitute bench bat role for the Red Sox. I think he did a good job. Ceddanne Rafaela, like, again, this is a tough one, right? This can go back and forth between B or C. I don't think he makes it into the A category because of the fact that he was so all over the place at the plate this season, but he has platinum level defense. You put him in the B category, right? Rob Refsnyder, again, another guy, that's probably B tier as well, right? You could talk about the end of the season, you could talk about the postseason, but we're talking about the season as a whole here. Rob filled his role and filled his role really well. Roman Anthony, easy S tier for me. Easiest. There were so many expectations on Roman Anthony. There was so much hype around this kid. And then he came in and was everything we expected him to be and more. If he hadn't gotten hurt, I think he probably would have been an extremely important part of the Red Sox down the stretch. I don't even think he would have been. He probably would have been a contributing factor to the Red Sox being the #1 wild card. So you have to take into consideration how important Roman Anthony was to this team. Blake Sabol, I mean, he didn't have any impact if we're being honest, right? I mean, the dude got what, like 20 plate appearances with the Sox? Same with Ali Sanchez, right? He was on the team for a while. We never really saw him. Slayton, I think you go C or D here. I'm going to go C just to be a little bit nice, right? I think he had a bit of a down year, especially in the middle part of this season, but he came back, looked pretty good, did pretty well in the postseason, so he was a pretty average. I think there's more to unlock with Justin Slayton for sure. Robert Stock, he did his job, right? He did his job, but not really a ton of impact here. Trevor Story, absolute A-tier player. If he didn't have that month of May, he probably would be an S-tier player for me, but, you know, the defensive metrics, not exactly fantastic. Did have a lot of errors down the stretch here, but the offense was one of the more consistent offenses we've seen in a very long time. Abraham Toro did his job for a minute and then stunk, right? He was a good player and then a bad player, so it averages out to an above failing grade. Greg Weiser, I mean, Greg Weiser was fine this season, right? He was solid, I think, for the most part. He had some really bad, big moments that stand out, but overall, I think he was a pretty solid player. Garrett Whitlock absolutely deserves an A. If Aroldis Chapman's the best, Garrett Whitlock's right under him, and I don't think that's really much to debate here. Justin Wilson, I'll give a B. I think for the most part this season, he was your high leverage left. Bernie ended up in that sort of mid-leverage role, and Wilson really took that over. I know towards the end, he really lost himself a bit, but for most of the year, he was your high leverage guy. Willie Abreu, again, I'll put him in the B category, right? I think the defense was solid. I think the power was solid. He was just so inconsistent, right? He'd have weeks where he was the best player in baseball. He'd have weeks where he's the worst player in baseball. Joshua Winkowski, I mean, some could put him in the worst. I think that would be fair, but no impact, right? He got hurt pretty early on here. Connor Wong, I mean, this just wasn't a good season for Wong, right? Offensively, he didn't hit a single home run. Defense, there was issues sometimes. Overall, I would think it was a pretty solid defensive season, but you can't ignore just simply how bad he was at the plate this year. And finally, the last player we're going to be talking about today is Masataka Yoshida. I'm going to put Mas in the D tier. I think a lot of his offensive production in the postseason bumps him up a lot of people's list, but we're looking at the season as a whole, and when he came back, he just simply was not productive for this Red Sox team. And that right there is our player tier list. So we got to talk about a couple of things after that. For Alex Cora, I think you sit there and this was a playoff team, right? This was a playoff team through injuries, through a rotation that was in shambles, through trading your best player, through a very mediocre to bad trade deadline, right? And you still end up in the postseason. Now, you didn't do super well in the postseason, but you still got there for the first time in a few years. So to say Alex Cora had a bad year seems a little bit narrative-based, in my opinion. I think he was a good manager this year, an above-average manager this year. I think there were issues that you could point to, especially with bullpen management, that people did not like, but ultimately, at the end of the day, what comes to fruition is what your record shows you at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, they were one of the top, 12 teams in the entire sport. So you take that every single time. I think Alex Cora had a really solid year this year. Craig Breslow, I mean, there were good things, right? You look at the S tier here, it's Chapman, Crochet, and Roman Anthony. Two of those guys were brought in by Craig Breslow. All of them were extended by Craig Breslow. He had some great extensions, even in the A tier, right? Bregman, Narvaez, those were all guys that Craig Breslow brought in. However, look at the F tier and the worst tier, right? Those are all guys that Breslow also brought in. So I think you put him in the C tier. The deadline really hurt this team, and the fact that he was not able to pivot has a really, really big factor into that. So I can't give him anything above a C. I think there's going to be arguments to be made that he's a D or F tier, but I think C is the right spot for him. John Henry, again, you look at this and you say, okay, he extended Roman Anthony, he extended Garrett Crochet, he paid for and then extended Roldis Chapman, he paid for Alex Bregman, right? He extended Christian Campbell, right? He put money into this team this year. I don't know that it was enough for the Red Sox to get over that hump. So because of that, we're going to put him in C tier, which is the highest we've ever put him on this channel. So I guess that's progress to be made. And finally, the Red Sox as a whole. They didn't get the job done. They kind of fell apart in the postseason, but they got to the postseason, right? Last year was a dead average, mediocre C season. And if you are comparing it between this year and last year, it is a better season than what we had last year, which means for me, it's a B tier season for the Boston Red Sox. Now they have to figure out how they get to A or an S tier year. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my grading of the Boston Red Sox. I'm sure you guys are all going to agree wholeheartedly on every single thing I said. So let me know in the comment section down below. Where do you guys agree? Where do you guys disagree? And overall, how do you think the 2025 Sox season went? Thank you all very much for clicking on this video, and I will see you in the red seats.